Hello. Happy Monday, y'all. And welcome to Faith, Purpose, Profit, what I like to call FPP Live, a time I connect with you every Monday at 7 p.m. EST to connect all things faith, purpose, and profit. Only if you want to live as the highest and best version who God created you to be. And yes, this is for you whether you're starting a business alongside your 9 to 5 or growing it, or if you want to find work that gives you meaning and fulfillment. I wonder if you realize that God put something so special inside of you that you have a specific purpose to fulfill. So as you're coming in, tell me hello. Let me tag you all. Those of you that will join me live, come on in and say hello. My tagging is not working, so I'll come back and tag you later. And so as you're coming in, tell me where you are in the world. And you're going to see me looking over here to the side because here's what I know for sure is I can't see your name here in our comments for whatever reason. It doesn't always tell me who you are. Gotta love this technology. And so you'll see me look over time from time to time if I can get it out. So that I can see who you are. So with that, we are starting a new series in this episode. The episode is called Success Doesn't Equal Easy. And let me tell you, this was really sparked by a conversation I was having with one of my clients. And when I was talking to her, and she was talking about how hard it was and how hard it is to really get clear on your purpose sometimes, and not just your purpose but the lane God created you to dwell in fulfillment of it. And I said to her, so who in the Bible, whose story in the Bible was easy? Give me one person. Give me one. And when I hung up the phone with her, we laughed about that, of course. And when I hung up the phone with her, that really still resonated with me. And here's what I began to realize. We live in a microwave generation. We want everything quick, fast, now. We want it overnight. And that is not how success works. When I'm talking to successful women, I often think you forgot all that you have gone through to get to the level that you are at now. And when God has more for you, listen, what got you here is not going to get you there. And then there is more you've got to do, but you think it's supposed to be easy. I don't know how or who, messing up all my curls, told you that it was supposed to be easy. And so, as I sat with it, as I do with every episode in quiet contemplation, what I began to realize is there is a wealth hall of fame. The Bible holds a wealth hall of fame. And so, in this series, I'm going to walk you through some of the wealthiest people in the Bible and their journey. And my purpose in walking you through their journey is for you to see clues to yours. See, the Bible is a great textbook that teaches you how to live. And if you use the principles from whoever you resonate with in the Bible to teach you what you need to do in your own journey, it will help you not just to make the shift, the pivot, the transition that you are in right now. How do I know you're in it right now? Because you're watching me. But will help you be successful, not just for you, but for God. Because ultimately, everything we do is about kingdom building. And so let me get into this episode because I'll keep talking about it and I won't ever share with you all that I have here. So our foundational Bible verse, because you know I always got one, is Deuteronomy 8:18 that says, "And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers as it is this day." And even though the Bible was written centuries ago, that same covenant is established with us all now. And that covenant was with Abraham. So we're starting this series digging into Father Abraham. Because listen, there's a song I remember I used to sing when I was little called Father Abraham had many sons. Let me not sing many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you, right? And so we used to sing that in my in camp when I was little. I went to my little Christian camp every year when I was little. So Abraham really is who God made that covenant with. And so I'm going to break down the covenant, and then I want to break down the clues that Abraham leaves for us. And yes, Abraham was already doing great when God called him, just like many of you. God calls you in the middle of your phenomenal, successful career. Why? Because you got more to do, right? So let's talk about when God established his covenant with Abraham. And it's here, Genesis 12:1 and 2, that says, "Now the Lord had said to Abram," now mind you, his name was Abram, and God changed his name to Abraham after he was obedient to what God asked him to do. My question is, will you be obedient to the next level of your purpose that God is stirring up inside of you? Hmm. See, for me, when I realize and I look at my own journey, I always say God didn't just change my name, He changed my life. And what I mean by that is who I was back in the day is no longer who I am today. I am a more advanced version of Nicole. So all my people back in the day used to call me Nikki. And I tried to get grown in high school and I started telling people to call me Nicole, but now I feel like Nicole and not Nikki. Because I'm so different than I was then in a good way because I've grown and expanded. Okay. So let me read this, the whole Bible verse. Genesis 12:1 and 2. Now the Lord had said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I really want you to understand this. In my spirit filled Bible, here's a note that says underneath this Bible verse God wants us to have wealth, but money is only part of wealth. You heard me? Money's only part of that. A person can have millions and still be poor, poor in health, poor in peacefulness, poor in friendships, poor in every other area of your life. Wealth is more than money and possessions. We need the wealth of both, number one, to receive God's covenant of prosperity, to receive wealth without it controlling us, and number two, to see his breath and intent for our whole being. That's that abundant life, not just abundant bank account, abundant life. That's in relationships, that's in health, that's in everything. That's was God's covenant that he made to Abraham, but then he made it to all of us. Okay. So he gives Abraham birth, both a purpose and a promise. The promise is if you do what I'm telling you to do, which is get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house. He told Abraham to leave everything he knew. And then he said, to a land I'm going to show you. And what does he say? I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. He says blessing twice. Overemphasis, Lord. Why do you think that is? So let me walk you through the three lessons that you should learn from Abraham. And here's what I want to challenge you to do in this series as I share with you another person in the what I call the God's wealth Hall of Fame week after week. I want you to find which of these characters in the Bible, these people in the Bible, resonate with you the most. I'll tell you which one resonates with me when I get to that week. But I feel like a little nugget of all of them I've learned so much from. Okay. So with that, number one, let go of what you know. Now, if you've been with me week after week, month after month, as I share and pour into you, you know I always say this. There's a couple ways I say it. I say let go of comfort. And so that's one way I say it. Now, listen, let me just check in with you. And I really want you to think about this. What comfort zones or comfortable things or places are you holding on to? Is it a group of friends that you've known for years? And sometimes what happens is you outgrow them. Doesn't mean there's anything bad. You can love them just the same. But sometimes God is calling you to another place. And because they don't see it and don't get it, sometimes you might have to let them go for a season so that you can go after the newness that God is telling you. Maybe it's places and people that you're totally secure with. That could be a job you're secure with. That could be your colleagues you're secure with or are comfortable with or enjoy. And sometimes it just means it's a time for a newness of how you do what you do and be who you be with them. It's experiences you're confident that you can handle. So sometimes you get to a job and you're secure. And because you have the secure, you think you feel secure. You think you have security, but let me tell you, no job is secure. The only thing that's secure is your purpose. Something can come in the next day, and funding could be gone, and your boss could quit, and a new boss comes in and he fires everybody because he's bringing in his own team. No job is secure. So you think you're being comfortable, but you're relying on something other than God. Maybe it's conversations you avoid because it's going to make you uncomfortable. Like sometimes I know, I'll be honest with you, as a CEO of a business, there are conversations that I have to have that sometimes are uncomfortable. But what I know is God is stretching me in a new way as my business grows, my team grows, and the conversations I have to have with people grow in a new and different way. So what does that mean for me? I've got to grow to meet the need of my team. Oh, I can have a whole episode on that. A time or place where things have been easy. I talked about that. Tasks you know you can accomplish. So you stay in your role in that job security because you know you can accomplish your task. Listen, God is always going to give you a newness of your purpose that's going to scare you. Why? Because I believe that's when your faith grows the most, when you have to totally rely on God, when you can't see how. And the last thing I have here is responsibilities or roles that make you look good. Why? Because sometimes when you're doing new things, you feel this thing called imposter syndrome. Have y'all heard of that? Or have you felt that? And it's only because you're using your gift in a way you may have never used it before, and it makes you feel like you're being an imposter, but you're not. You're expanding your territory. So that's one way you got to let go of what you know. Another way I've talked about it is walking by faith. Now, you've heard me say Hebrews 11:1 ad nauseum if you've been with me a while, right? Hebrews 11:1 is faith is a substance of things hoped for, that evidence of things not seen. Not seen. The faith is a substance of things hoped for. So when God gives you a vision, you're going to hope for it, but you won't see it. And what I know so many successful women ask is, God, show me where you're taking me, or show me how I'm going to get there. And God doesn't function like that. He wants you to trust him along the way. Listen, uh, there's a Bible verse, Romans 4:16. I'm gonna read that instead of Hebrews 11:1, even though I just said it. And therefore, therefore, it is of faith that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed. Remember, I told you what the promise, the covenant is. Let me read that part again. Therefore, it is of faith and that it might be according to grace, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed. Now, let me back up again and say grace means approval or favor. Therefore, it is of faith that it might be according to favor or approval, so that the promise might be sure to all the seed, not only to those who are of the law, but also to those who are of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. Romans 4:16. Okay. So listen, the law of the world might say one thing, but God's law is always supersedes the world's law. Now, you guys have heard me talk about conforming and transforming in our last episode. I think it was our last episode. But what it talks about, it might be according to grace, to favor. God gave you favor around your purpose when you were born. I wonder if you realize that. Always, there's what was that movie called where the person kept calling themselves God's favorite? We're all God's favorites, especially when we are dominating in the lane that God created us to dwell in, right? See, faith happens when we stop trying to do things our way or at our efforts or the way we've always done things, the way we know how to do them, because that's only going to get you so far. When God has more for you, there's a whole nother level of you that's got to be activated. That, can I tell you, you don't even realize is there. And how do I know? From my own journey. You guys have heard my story. If I really tell you that I'm shy, and would never choose to be a speaker, nobody believes me when I say that. Nobody ever believes me when I say that. And yet, it's the truth, right? So you've got to know that God is going to do whatever or meet you at the level you're willing to play in. You're willing to risk it all to gain it all. You're willing to trust him, right? See, Abraham stepped out on faith. And he really stepped into a journey that would change not just his life, but generation after generation after generation after generation after him. Okay. So I'm going to post a few questions that you should ponder for your own self to see where you are in this whole conversation around comfort. I'm going to walk you through the other two steps. It's 3 steps here. But before I do that, let me read this. Hebrews 11:8 says, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. He went out not knowing where he was going. And the problem for many of you, when I talk about staying in comfort or having to move things in faith, is you want to know where you're going before you go. That's not how God works, right? Listen, the Passion Translation of the same Bible verse says, faith motivated Abraham to obey God's call and leave the familiar to discover the territory he was destined to inherit from God. So he left with only a promise and without even knowing ahead of time where he was going. Abraham stepped out in faith. So number 2 is a journey really shapes you. It's the journey. That's why I believe God doesn't show us where we're going, because every step, listen, even where you are right now is part of the journey. It's part, but you're not done, right? See, God never gives us a roadmap. He never gives us a step by step guide. He never gives us a manual. He never gives us instructions or a definite plan. He just says go. And he might not say the words go to you, but when you feel that rumbling in your spirit that there's something bigger, that it's time for your next, that's God saying go. Hebrews 11:9 says, by faith, he dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country. Now, this is talking about Abraham. Let me read it one more time. By faith, he dealt in the land of promise as in a foreign country. Now, have you ever traveled internationally, like a foreign country? Think about all the things that you need, especially when you don't speak the language. So, like, for instance, for me, I've been to Paris and Spain and Italy. And when you don't know the language, you got to learn the language, or at least enough to get around. You got to learn the customs, because every country does something different, right? Brittany Griner, y'all know that story. Not trying to make a funny out of it, but there were customs in Russia she didn't know, and therefore, Russia took advantage of that, right? So you don't know the customs in a foreign country. So I need you to get this. When you are already successful, God is calling you to be an immigrant, because he's taking you to a country you don't know. Just the same with Abraham. And it's all about the journey. The most important piece, and I need you to get this, is that you've got to learn in this new place. This is why having a coach is important. Listen, times that I've gone out of the country and I've had someone that could be my interpreter along the way. Oh, let me tell you the fun I had. When I can find a local that could take me to places that I would never know otherwise. My husband and I were talking about this weekend. I had the best calamari I've had in my life in Paris, across the street from Louis Vuitton. I was like, yes, at a restaurant that Daryl's customer, who is French, his wife didn't even speak English. And we went to dinner with them. And I had the little bit of French that I had in the ninth grade that I was trying to pull up and remember. And she had the little bit of English that she had. But we had such a great time at the best restaurant with the best calamari I've had in my entire life. And we took a picture and I said, oh my God, that's Louis Vuitton behind me. I was so excited. But I'm sharing that with you because, again, it's about the journey. And if you've never been there before in a foreign country, think about what that looks like. One of my best friends in the whole world, she's actually my line sister, my sorority sister, is Cuban. She and her family moved to the United States when she was in the seventh grade. Her first language is English. So still to this day, when she reads something, she reads it in Spanish and she has to then translate it to English for herself. Now, when you talk to her, you would never know that her first language isn't English, because her English is really good. But she thinks in Spanish. Now, it's gotten easier over the years, but you've got to learn, who do you need to be in the newness of this place? And so for Abraham, he met people along the way that helped him. See, God is going to give you instruction, but I need you to get this. He doesn't give you instruction until you're in the step. And if you don't know what step to take, this is why God puts people around you. I remember I read this post that said you need both God and counseling. You need both God and coaching. You can't be successful without both. Remember, I've said this, you need methodology and revelation. God gives a revelation. I can't do nothing with revelation, but I can do a whole lot with methodology for you. That's what a good coach does, right? There's a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, life is a journey, not a destination. It's about the journey, right? And here's Proverbs 13:11. Easy come, easy go, but steady diligence pays off. Now, first of all, when I found that Bible verse and I was studying this, I've said easy come, easy go so much, I did not know that was a Bible verse. And it is. Proverbs 13:11. Easy come, easy goes, but steady diligence pays off. So again, number one is let go of what you know. Number two is the journey that shapes you. And now the things you learn, and this is going to be, by the way, a recurring theme in many of the characters I share with you about in this series. But then number three is the power to choose. See, God gives each of us free will. He's not going to make you do anything or be anything. Listen, Romans 4:20-21 says, he did not waver at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God and being fully convinced that what he promised, he was also able to perform. Now, again, this is Abraham. Okay, let me read it one more time. He did not waver. Listen, waver means to vacillate between choices, to fluctuate in opinion or direction. He didn't waver, he didn't fluctuate. He didn't vacillate between choices. He stayed true to what he knew God told him, despite the fact that he couldn't see it. And see, God is never going to make you do anything. He's going to allow you to choose. And I'm going to tell you, sometimes choosing the thing that God wants you to do is going to be a hard choice to make. I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to be hard. But God promises that inheritance, that wealth, not just money. Listen, every morning when I wake up, I thank God for the house that I live in. This house is 4 times the size of the house I grew up in. Sometimes my husband and I laugh like we don't need this big house, but yet I've used everything. I've had VIP days with clients here. I have a studio that I'm in right now in this house and an office. And my husband has a studio and an office. But I'm clear that this house is a gift from God for the years that I've stayed true to my calling, even when it wasn't easy, even when it didn't look like I would see the other side of it. Even my husband is a gift from God because, baby, I can tell you about all the frogs I kissed before my husband. But when you stay true to who God has called you to be and committed to it no matter what, it's not easy. Remember, success doesn't equal easy, but it always equals worth it when you stay in and do the work, right? So you have two choices. You can focus on fear or faith. See, fear will keep you in comfort. Fear will give you every reason not to do something because it's going to be hard. You don't have to say fear is faith in reverse. Because you can either choose to walk in fear and let fear guide you, or let faith be your guide. Listen, there have been times when I had to risk it all to gain it all. Did I know it was going to work? No. But I was willing to try it, knowing that I'm doing this for God and not for me. And so Proverbs 24:10 says, if you fail to pieces, if you fall to pieces in a crisis, there wasn't much to you in the first place. If you fall to pieces in a crisis, there wasn't much to you in the first place. In other words, if you give up, if you let fear guide you and you start losing your mind, then you weren't operating out of faith. You were letting fear in that moment guide you. You were letting your flesh, the emotions that will come, that the flesh will definitely shake you up and scare you about. You're letting those guide you. And if Abraham teaches you nothing else, and this is the first part of the story. Are there times that, by the way, this happened when some people say some of the various things I've studied has said that when God told Abraham to leave, he was 75 years old. 75. So he was good and settled. He wasn't 25, he wasn't 35, he was 75. And then in his 90s, God promises him a son. And he ends up having that son too in his 90s. But the world would say it's not possible. Everything is possible with God. The question is, will you trust God and allow him to use you in ways that you never thought were possible? Ask Abraham, right? So here is the receipt of Abraham's wealth. Okay. Abraham's servant says this about him. This is Genesis 24:35. The Lord has greatly blessed my master so that he has become rich, and he has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and servants and maids and camels and donkeys. And the reason I wanted to read that is because sometimes people also think that God doesn't want you to be wealthy. Now, I don't have this prosperity conversation because I need you to understand wealth is bigger than just money. But when you are doing the thing that God has created you to do and you're gaining for God, God is going to give you gain back. That's profit, y'all. Profit means gain. So that's just part one of this series. That's Abraham, the father of faith that he's called. And yes, he's in the Hall of Fame. And I think we don't stop long enough to realize all that Abraham had when God called him and all that God gave him after he was obedient to what God called him to do, which was the promise. And we all are descendants that can have a part of that living trust if we're obedient to what God has called us to do. Listen, I'm going to pop in our Facebook group a couple of things to ponder. So I need you to really get clear on if you're living in comfort, if you're really in the journey and learning and growing in ways that you need to go after what's next for you. And if You are choosing powerfully the transition and the steps and the risk and the uncomfortable things that God needs you to do to be all that He's called you to be. Listen, God doesn't have to use any of us, He chooses to need us. So He gives you gifts and gives you an assignment. He chooses to need us, but He's not going to make you do it. The question is, will you do the hard thing? Will you do what is uncommon? That's why there aren't many people that are wealthy, because only a few will really do the work. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be obedient to my calling. And I always welcome you into that journey. So why I do FPP Live. And so with that said, I want to hear from you. Tell me the I know many of you guys watch the replay, whether it's here or in YouTube. I want to hear the one thing you're committed to do to go after your next level, not to settle for where you are, but to become the next version of you that God is waiting on. As we'll continue this conversation next Monday, as we'll continue this conversation in our next episode, right? So come on in, tell me the insight you've got. Tell me the one thing you're committed to do. I'm going to post again in here in the Facebook group the the questions to ponder, so that you're clear on if you're living in comfort, if you're fighting for job security instead of purpose security, promise security, obedience to God's calling on your life security, which sometimes you can't see it. But that's why God calls all of us to trust Him. There's a Bible verse, is why I pause, that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all things shall be added unto you." And my hope is, as I share these members of God's Wealth Hall of Fame, you'll see how all things were added because they did the work. All right. So, with that, again, this was episode 1. I will join you next Monday to dig in further in our next person's journey in the Wealth Hall of Fame, of God's Wealth Hall of Fame. Again, give me some insight to what you found valuable here. And with that said, that's it. I'll see you next Monday for another FPP Live and to continue our conversation in this series. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining. Bye. Hey, successful woman. Okay, so just pushed the wrong button. So let me do the right outro. Bye, y'all.